Good evening and welcome to another edition of Taking It Back to the Streets. My name is Andy Michaud, and this show we talk about issues and topics in the city of Waterbury, mainly local politics, and today is no different. And I do want to throw a shout out to Tom Hill. He has a show Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. One of the old timers back here at Public Access, Tom Hill. Please try to watch his show. Last week he had Mayor Pernaruski on, which was a very interesting show and very informative. So I'd like to introduce my guest now. His name is Josh Brenner, running for Alderman in the 2nd District, Switchell. And Josh, thanks for coming on the show. I know you've been out in the community quite a bit, talking to the local voters. I know that you ran in the Republican primary just like I did, and unfortunately both didn't make it, but you are continuing to run as an unaffiliated
petitioning candidate
in the 2nd District. So Josh, welcome, once again, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us your reason for running and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Andy. I appreciate your time. And like I said, my name is Dr. Joshua Barney Brenner, Ed.D. I just finished my doctorate of education in New York City. And I'm running because I'd like to contribute my experience to the city of Waterbury. And my wife and I and our 5 boys have lived here for 6 years, and I see a bright future for the city of Waterbury.
Bright future. What do you see that's bright?
Well, there's a lot of challenges, clearly, the city has, and we hope that with people coming together and working together, there could be improvement. We'll hopefully see an economic boost, more businesses coming here, younger families coming, settling here, growing here, improving educational access, improving access to mental health resources. Some of these issues are important to me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Joshua? I know you were telling me before we went on the air here, and you have quite a long resume of what you've done in your life and where you've been. It sounds like you've studied all over the world. So why don't you explain a little bit of who you are and a little bit of your background?
Sure. I have had one of the greatest educations in America, and I'm very, very grateful. I started at Glenbrook North High School in Northbrook, Illinois, which is an outstanding public high school. When I was a sophomore at, they call it GBN, President Clinton came to our high school because our math and science scores, we were top of the world. We were #1 with the consortium of schools near us. After high school, I studied at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, also known as UPenn, and I studied Spanish. While I was at the University of Pennsylvania, I performed with the Mask and Wig Comedy Club. We traveled all over the country and performed, and we also had a beautiful theater in Center City in Philadelphia.
So you performed?
Yes, I was a writer and performer, and we wrote original musical comedy.
This is through the college?
Yes, at the University of Pennsylvania. We also had the opportunity to study in Spain, in La Universidad de Alicante. Alicante is a small city on the Mediterranean coast in Spain. And I also spent 6 months in Argentina in La Universidad de Buenos Aires, University of Buenos Aires. It was a funny story because I'm, like I said, originally from Chicago. All 4 grandparents were born in Chicago, lived their whole lives in Chicago, and had very distinct Chicago accents. Most people recognize it from the Bears and the Bulls. And I'll tell you a funny story. My grandfather, I told him I was going to South America, to Argentina to study abroad, and he said, "Joshua Barney, I hear you're going to study in Buenos Aires." And I said, "Grandpa, I think it's pronounced Buenos Aires." He said, "That's what I said, Buenos Aires."
Funny guy, huh?
Yeah, a sense of humor, and both grandfathers were World War II veterans. They dedicated their lives to preserving democracy and really preserving the freedoms we have at the United States, and they've really influenced my whole outlook on life. I also, educationally, I have a degree, a Master's of Science in Education and Social Policy from Northwestern University, and I just finished my Doctorate of Education Leadership and Administration in New York City. So Dr. Joshua Barney Brenner, Ed.D., and my dissertation was a quantitative study of the help-seeking attitudes of adolescents and mental health literacy.
Wow. And I know you mentioned earlier that you also went to Yale, you went to Harvard. I mean, how many colleges did you go to?
To be very specific, from the Harvard, Yale, and Columbia, those were not degree-granting programs. But at Yale, I was a member of the Yale Writers Workshop with a focus on creative nonfiction. And then I was also a member of the Yale Directors Workshop, which was a practical workshop for theater directors. At Columbia University, I was a member of the Klingenstein Institute. I've taught in schools, public and private. I'm a classroom teacher. I taught Spanish, English, and basically every grade from pre-K through 12 I've taught.
Where?
I taught most recently at Choate Rosemary Hall. I've taught at Hopkins School in New Haven. I taught at Hamden Hall and public schools in Chicago when I was in graduate school at Northwestern.
Wow. So you have a really well-rounded education.
Yeah, I'm an educator. I believe in education, and I believe that every student and every child in this country deserves access to an outstanding, excellent education.
Speaking about education in Waterbury, I know that in the school system, the public school system, there's a lot of issues with disruption from the kids. You have a lot of kids coming from the inner city that they've grown up with very hard lives. And, they're very disruptive. Some are causing, they become criminals. There's fights in schools. Would you be in favor of basically separating really the good kids from the bad kids to take them out? Because I know last school year at Kennedy High School, the last 2 days of school, they had riots. One day they arrested 11 people, the next day they arrested 6. Now, would you be in favor of bringing these kids back into the school system or put them in a separate school?
For that specific situation, I would not agree or concur to separating them based on good kids and bad kids. I think one thing that we need is access to more mental health professionals in these schools. Usually when there are challenges like these in public high schools, the access to mental health resources are very limited. So that's number one. And the second thing I learned last night at the Bucks Hill Community Club meeting was that there was a lady there who's investing more and more time and energy into, preschool education from nursery through preschool. So by the time that young Waterbury kids get to kindergarten, they've learned, they've improved their literacy skills, and they're ready to go for kindergarten. So obviously, when we're dealing with high school students that haven't had necessarily that access to social emotional learning, emotional health and wellness, combined with literacy and math, it's a challenging situation. So I sort of look at things long-term, and long-term we need to invest in early education.
Well, it sounds like you could be investing quite a bit because, there's so many issues in the city of Waterbury with these kids. And the main reason these kids are so disruptive in school is because of their upbringing. And as an example of trying to make people accountable, I had a tenant one time that they lived like slobs. They had a little baby, they had a dog poop on the floor, cigarette butts, ashes, garbage, pizza, everything all over the apartment. And one day they got a knock on the door. It was DCF. DCF came in, looked around, talked to them, gave them an ultimatum. They called me up immediately, said, listen, could you help us get some flooring for our living room? And I went over, the place was spotless. Mm-hmm. So a little knock on the door, straighten those people right out. Would you be in favor of trying to have maybe a school resource officer or somebody from the school to start going to some of the houses where you have the most problem children that have the most issues to try to see what's going on here? How come your kid isn't in school for the last week? would you be in favor of some type of intervention?
I think in the schools, there should be more school psychologists, licensed social workers, psychiatric nurses. These are the type of people that we need in the schools. And the second thing I would say is that right now in 2025-2026 school year, the type of curriculum that high school students are being presented with, I don't think it really flows with what they need right now. So I think many students in high school, not everybody, some kids love school. Personally, when I was in high school, I loved it. I played soccer, I was in student government, I was in the plays, I took AP courses, but most people don't necessarily have that same love of school or love of that experience. So one thing that I notice is that the curriculum that students are having access to, in my opinion, should be a little bit more technical, vocational, so that it's leading towards a job. Because the average high school student today, especially post-COVID, where there was such a falling behind with what happened with the pandemic, is that the best thing is to get practical, real-life skills. When someone's 17 and 18 and does not necessarily like high school in the first place, learning Shakespeare and analyzing Shakespeare and doing algebra might not be the most effective way to get kids through high school successfully.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. The vocational schools like Caner Tech in Waterbury, there's I think 10 or 12 vocational schools in the state of Connecticut, and to me, those schools are very, very important for these kids. Like you said, they're going to get out of school and do what? But if they go to a place like Caner Tech and could learn plumbing and electrical and carpentry and automotive, at least they have a path where they could get a decent job and have a decent living.
Yep, I concur.
Let's quickly, one of my main topic is the Palace Theater. I've been talking about that for the last 20 years, and the reason I've been talking about the Palace Theater is because it's very rarely ever open, and it's not supposed to be that way. We have an agreement with this management company, Palace Theater Group, led by Frank Tavera. They're supposed to do 100 shows a year. They're averaging about 30, 35 real shows on the stage, and I have the list here of very small events that they try to pass off as an event at the theater. And if you were on the Board of Aldermen, would you pursue looking into the Palace Theater to try to force accountability in their operations and the number of shows that they bring?
I would contribute my unique perspective to improving the situation in two different ways. First of all, UConn Waterbury has great access, and the University of Connecticut has a top-notch theater program with a specific MFA in acting. I think that program should really be tapping into the Palace Theater, increasing performances. Also, I believe Post University does not have a theater department, and there are many, many students that are really wanted to go into performing arts and into theater. So, in Chicago, they just celebrated 50 years of the Steppenwolf Theater Company. Famous actors like Gary Sinise, John Malkovich. They started this small company. They had 15 actors, and they put on dozens and dozens of plays that were critically acclaimed and groundbreaking new theater. This is something that Waterbury could also do. And then the second thing that I would say in general, there's an organization here in Connecticut called the Connecticut Film and Television Alliance, and they're trying to bring more and more production companies to film in Connecticut. I know that there was one at the Palace Theater a few months ago that they filmed there. This should be happening way more. And Waterbury, just like many cities, smaller cities across the country, are being very proactive, attracting those production companies, which creates economic stimulus, there are jobs, and in Hollywood right now, it's incredibly expensive. A production here in Waterbury, the company from Los Angeles or other places in the world, could really contribute to the economic development. And that's called the Connecticut Film and Television Alliance.
Yeah, I mean, I did mention that with other people, using the theater to get more kids involved in theater. Not every kid's a sports kid.
Right.
And some are into theater, drama. I think the Palace Theater would be a great avenue to bring kids in, and I know that, one example we use is to try to have like an American Idol program in the city of Waterbury and do, different performances on the stage of the palace and have judging and a winner and loser. So you might get kids, instead of hanging out on the street or playing video games all day, maybe they'll be standing on a street corner like Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons under a street light and coming up with some music and then performing on the Palace Theater. I think that would be great for the city also, but it's just not happening there. They're just not doing the performances that they should be doing. They're clearly in default, and there's a mechanism to remove the Palace Theater Group from the agreement because they're in default. Would you be in favor of pursuing that?
I think I'd have to look into it a little bit more
Of course,
specifically.
you'd have to be convinced, but if you were convinced.
I don't know, let me look at it first to give an intelligent response. But I know you're an expert in these things, so I appreciate it. But like I said, the main thing is especially with students and high school students, each student and as a faculty and the staff, they have to identify at least one area, either academically or extracurricularly, that they really love. They have a passion for that, whether it's sports, which is a great outlet. I know there are a lot of resources for sports here in Waterbury, but also for the arts, for filmmaking, for choirs. Each student really needs to identify a passion and a way to take that passion into the professional workplace, in the marketplace.
I see. All right, Joshua, it's been a short time. We're running out of time. Going to bring Nelson on next, Nelson Roman. Anything else you want to say before we wrap it up other than vote Joshua Brenner?
I'll just say, first of all, thank you, Andy. I appreciate you letting me on the show. It's been a pleasure. I will say one campaign strategy that I've tried to employ during this whole process is really going all across the 2nd District and speaking with voters. I've had incredible individual conversations. I spoke with 2 really, really wonderful citizens of Waterbury on Summer Street. They're doing amazing things, increasing sober houses. I spoke to voters all the way north in Bucks Hill. It's really been invigorating and amazing to really appreciate the diversity and the strength of the 2nd District. So that's been my focus the whole time, is speaking with people, knocking on doors, and going to every street in the 2nd District. So I appreciate that.
Very quickly, come Tuesday, Election Day, let's just say you don't win. Do you plan to stay involved locally in politics, locally in issues? What's your plan?
I'm going to take it one day at a time. We'll see what happens.
He's a good politician, this guy.
Let's take it one step at a time, I'd say. But I'm fully invested. Like I said, we have 5 kids here. You know, we go to doctors here. 2 of our children were born at St. Mary's. The last 2 were born in St. Mary's. The other thing that I will say is that Waterbury really needs to improve healthcare access for women and children. Specific example, sometimes it's hard to get a routine ultrasound in Waterbury. Some people have to go to Hartford to a hospital just to get a routine ultrasound. That's something that needs to be fixed and something that I dedicate time to improving.
All right, Joshua. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. In the future, I continue with this show. I'll have you back on again. We can talk about some other issues and keep you involved.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Andy.
Okay, so Joshua Brenner, 2nd District, vote Roby on
3C,
Tuesday.
3C.
3C. It was
3C.
Roby, now it's 3C.
Yeah.
Vote 3C on Tuesday in the 2nd District. Joshua Brenner. Once again.
Can I just translate that into Spanish?
Yes.
Entonces, para toda la comunidad hispana, por favor, vote por Dr. Joshua Barney Brenner. La elección municipal general es martes 4 de noviembre. Muchas gracias y estoy aquí para los ciudadanos de Waterbury. Thank you, Dr. Joshua Barney Brenner. I'm the one walking around knocking on doors and smiling.
Okay. We'll be right back with Nelson Roman. And once again, thank you to Joshua Brenner for coming on.
Thanks,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.